Now, Karen, I think the political climate is something that is starting to get interesting. It's not necessarily quite as standard as we expect it to be. I think for the last few years, there was a sense that, well, the opposition is not a viable alternative. However, in hindsight, looking back, there have been quite a lot of controversies just within the last year and a half from the government that is now making you question that certainty. And you had an interesting phrase that I think you used on another platform that you mentioned to me off air yesterday when we were planning for today's show, where you mentioned the phrase battered wife syndrome with regards to how we, the population, are experiencing, I guess, this government or politics during this time period. We just take in abuse, and it's like we don't have the ability anymore to push back against it. We're just being beaten into submission almost by all of the controversies and all of the questionable decisions and all of the concerns that go unanswered. I mean, I'm sure there are fewer examples, of things that still bother you that are out there unresolved.
Right. So that what I would say in response to that, actually, having used the term battered wife syndrome, I then remembered in England, there was a case with a wife who was able to a new defense, which is very similar to the battered wife syndrome, but it's actually recognized as a defense called coercive control. And then I looked at what the signs of coercive control are, and one would not be remiss, or one would not be unfair to say that many of those major signs of coercive control, which are similar to battered wife syndrome, apply to what's happening in Trinidad. And then I will just say why I think it's really a phenomenon that we need to pay attention to more particularly today. And I went online and they said controlling behavior, verbal abuse, unreasonable actions, instilling fear, blaming everyone else, incapable of handling criticism, and gaslighting. And gaslighting is to make you feel it's your fault, not mine. And I don't think I'm wrong to say that within the last year or so, that those are criticisms that have been made of our Prime Minister. Can't take criticism, instill fear in people that they're afraid to criticize him. He never takes responsibility for making mistakes. He's a master of trying to not distract, but then take you off the beaten path onto a rabbit hole, so to speak. So I saw that and I said, that's really what's happening to Trinidad. Why am I saying so in particular now? I think it's become apparent, and that is my opinion, but my opinion is based on what is happening. And it's happening in quick succession. It's happening to a point where you can't get up to breathe, because as you go to come to terms with one thing, something else comes in the way that you're turning left, right, left, right, left, right. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, and they're skinning that cat every single way. And why do I say that? I mean, I will let you think, but I'll just give a list of what I think are. And people, the population, I'm not saying this out of any ill will or anything. So, I'm saying it because somebody has to say something. And there are many people who agree with me, but can't speak out either because for various reasons. So I would say that what has really brought it to the forefront, and in quick succession, these things have been happening, is the whole thing with Farley Augustine and the tape and the whole him giving the recording of Akil Abdullah saying that he was being, I don't know what you call being paid for doing something wrong. But I think it might qualify as a bribery or extortion. And then you had that, Farley Augustine himself making that, going in the parliament, in the THA, and saying what he said, and then the Prime Minister coming out and saying he didn't have any right to do that, and maybe he didn't, but it's called politics. Then quick on succession, we have Erla Christopher, who promised to do so much about the crime rate. Of course, she has failed miserably, but that's not even the point. The point is that under the 2006 amendment to the Constitution, when it came to the hiring, disciplining, transfer, all of those things, that remained the remit of the Police Service Commission. Anyone falling outside of that, below the deputy or the Police Service Commission, under one section, section 123, would then be subject to the Police Service Commission, commissioner and his deputy, and then they could appeal. So it would mean to me that for the government, now there's a Police Service Act, and the Police Service Act allows you to extend a person beyond the retirement age of 60, which she was, for 3 consecutive one-year periods. But that is of persons of a certain rank. They do not, that does not, cannot trump your constitutional arrangements. And for the government, the cabinet, to extend her beyond her retirement age without referring it, according to 123 of the Constitution, back to Parliament, well, it's gotten the green light to go for judicial review. But that, again, it does not leave a good taste in your mouth, particularly since there is a view, and it's not an unreasonable view, that she may feel beholden to the government. And all the actions that you've seen in relation to the Farley Augustine matter, which I have great concerns about. Why are you wanting to search his home? And this one, why aren't you going to the 2 government ministers he mentioned? Why aren't you speaking to the man who started this whole ball rolling of extortion and bribery? Why are you not paying attention to that? Why is all the focus on him? Because if in fact what he's saying has any truth in it, shouldn't you investigate it? The recording, the initial recording was done in March. It was not released until May. And according to Farley Augustine, Chief Secretary, that he was being coerced to release funds to one particular contractor over others who were very closely connected with 2 senior ministers of government. I don't know if it's true or not. I think it is. But
I actually, Karen, would say that from the population side, that scenario by itself has just gone so far off the rails, because it's really 3 issues that needs to be looked into. And as one more keeps piling on, I mean, if you listen to the Prime Minister, then it would be 4, because he's taken umbrage with how Farley did the presentation. But the point is, for the common person now just looking on, as what you said, it's too much. It's too much. We can't even get anything resolved, and they just keep piling up.
Can't come up for air.
Yes. Just with this alone, much less, there's a whole host of things that also we seem to have forgotten. But continue.
So that's the whole thing about a battered wife syndrome or coercive control. That's the whole thing. You just can't come up for air, because as you go with one, they hit you there, and that is what's happening. And I mean, Erla Christopher has been a complete failure. I don't know her. I don't have anything against her, but why you have to go to Parliament? Didn't your local government election results tell you that? Didn't the decision of the highest court of appeal of our country to date, which is the Privy Council, by a majority decision? I mean, and I quoted it already on this show. I mean, at least 10 times the majority talked about a democratic republic and saying it was not for the Parliament, much less the government, to change the law. That is something, because what you're doing by extending the life or trying to extend the life of councillors and aldermen beyond the 3 years according to the Local Government Act, to allow them to act for another year, was effectively to extend the, without going to Parliament, extend the life of the local government body or local government that we have in place without reference to Parliament. And the Privy Council had to tell our government, I don't care what, I mean, all due respect to our Attorney General, who I personally like, but my God, I'm sorry, Attorney General Amol. I think you're going to regret a lot of what you're doing. I know you're not looking at it now, but you lost a lot of respect. I think a lot of people work as lawyers and at your level, at the end of the day, to have the respect. You see how the Lebanon Brand didn't take the senior counsel. She got people's respect. When you finish, you're taking a risk with your respect. So coming back to him, for him to demean himself and to demean his office like a little puppet talking about numbers. How dare you as Attorney General do that? I mean, leave it for the man in the street to talk that nonsense now. Leave it for the side that didn't win, which is, I mean, in when you talk about it, private matters. But as Attorney General, you have no respect for the Privy Council. And about 10 comments shown was about one which stuck out the most to me, as I said. They said about 10 things about a democratic republic and the electorate. It is for the electorate to make those decisions. They've continuously made that point. And it said far less is it for the parliament, much less the government, to take away the right of the electorate to decide who are their local government representatives. It said if that 4-year term is applied to the new councillors and the new aldermen, but it cannot apply to the ones that are there. I mean, how shameful can you get? And the coup de grace. So we have between Farley Augustine, between the Prime Minister, sending people to go and raid his house and raid somebody else's house. Why are you not raiding the 2 government ministers that they talked about? He didn't do it. He didn't do it for any. There had to be a reason he did what he did. He called out. He said, "It's your friend." Why are we not looking into that? Because, to my mind, Earl and Christopher may seem beholden to the government. That's exactly what the Thomas versus the Attorney General, Lord Diplock, so many years ago spoke about. Why you need commissions and why you need independence to ensure that the government does not eventually have its army of its own, having the police service operating as its own personal army. I'm not saying that's what's happening in Trinidad, but we got to look at what's happening in Haiti. Haiti did not happen overnight. That anarchy, I'm not saying that's happening in Trinidad, but I'm saying the reason, when you look at the reason why Haiti has descended into gang warfare, the 2 reasons I've given, I've read some articles. One, the level of political corruption, number one, and the poverty, 65% of the people living in poverty. And we have to be careful that we don't sit down and have a government that keeps pushing the envelope to the brink and looking to see how much we will take. So I had the local government elections. I had the Earl of Christopher, which they got judicial review, to review the decision not to go back to Parliament, for her to be extended another year, which I think has merit in it. And of course, the procurement legislation, why it had to be passed. They have the majority. And you know, I have to blame myself too, in a way, for not educating myself and therefore passing off my knowledge to what I know to the public. I didn't realize that I shouldn't say most, I'd say a vast number of the provisions of the Procurement Act had not been proclaimed. What does that mean? It's not implemented. So when they talk about all these things, that the Validation Act was passed and the amendment to allow the Prime Minister to not having to go to the regulator when it's under 1 million. And then Section 63 saying that it is no longer the regulator, but it is the minister. Yeah, and not only to make regulations for ineligibility, who is ineligible.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what people are thinking. And then the pre-qualification requirements. I mean, I just don't know how people don't understand that they have literally gutted that legislation, because they never proclaimed the key provisions that brought that act into effect to make it transparency, accountability, value for money, and socio-economic benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Our new president, who I said was not fit for purpose, but she has to follow the instructions with this. But in any event, fit for purpose, I still hold to that view. Those key provisions, I don't know, most people didn't realize it. April the 26th, that's when they were proclaimed. So all along, we have a Procurement Act, that especially Section 7, which deals with procuring contracts. And just last point on that, don't underestimate the procurement legislation, you know, because most contracts of any real value, multi-million-dollar contracts, whether it's a bill of highway, bill of school, bill of hospital, bill of depot in Toko, bill of a fishing depot in, what's that place? Mitan. Sorry, I can't remember the name of Plum-Mitan. Whether it is or to do repairs to schools, the smaller ones, every single one of those were not subject to any of regulatory oversight, because the provision that gave the regulator the power, that, you know, those provisions had not been enacted. Then he was retired. His retirement came in January. I mean, they got to the legislation, and then the prime minister talk about WASA. And so what's the point then? What's the point? You cannot tell me that if you felt there was an emergent situation, that you could not have gone to the regulator and said, listen, we have an emergent situation. We need your okay on this. We will to look at this, you know, and using these excuses. So where will it end? Why don't you just throw the legislation away?
Karen, we need to take a break. But yes, I will just say, even the regulator and her independence is now, I think, questionable based on how she handled the first thing that she had to handle publicly, and how she just passed the buck. No, well, the Minister of Finance did it, so I'm not involved. And I was just beside myself. So I don't really have faith, even if we give her the power and authority in order to be the independent enforcement, that she would be independent. But that's just how she set herself up. But we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue on this, because now we have to look maybe a little bit towards the future, the possibilities. We have an election coming up, the dress rehearsal, and what that could mean with our current situation of being battered wives for our political husbands. Stay tuned to Talking Point.